I've been working in Berlin this month, and it's been really awesome. You guys have a great crowd here doing stuff. So I guess I'll tell you a little bit about my job with Derivative. I came in as the Python guy, and I guess I started around when they introduced Python into TouchDesigner, and I discovered after showing them some of my work, we figured out that I was doing kind of the most advanced Python work that anyone was doing in TouchDesigner. So I started helping them a bit, and long story short, they took me on as Python, and specifically to help with a new UI system, which has been many years coming, but is indeed coming. We're going to have an awesome UI system so that making your user interfaces will not be a nightmare anymore. And then during this time, I also developed TD Ableton, which is a Python connection to the Ableton system. Talks very closely, so you can get all the data out of Ableton Live. And also, I am a major bug hunter. I love to test all the features that they come out with. I just like to test the hell out of it, so I stop a lot of the bugs before they get to you. And so that's been kind of my technical job. And then in the last year, I've gotten really interested in teaching and how TouchDesigner is taught and how we can better kind of transmit ways of developing with Touch and also ways of sharing work. And so that's why when I came to the summit in Berlin, I decided to stay and kind of meet a lot of the European Touch users and kind of see how everybody works and share what's coming with our development, which is what I'm going to share with you guys as well. And seeing how everybody works very differently in TouchDesigner because it's a very open-ended system. And so being able to see how everybody works helps me to kind of understand how to bring it together and create features that everybody can use, and how to make stuff that's more shareable, kind of trying to not limit the creativity of what people can do, but still have a little bit more consistency so that it's easier to snap things together. Like if I make something, I can give it to you and it will work in your project more easily. Right now, you've probably noticed that you can get a lot of really cool TouchDesigner stuff online that people have built, but it's usually not built the way that you've built it, and it takes a while to incorporate it into your system. You more learn the technique from how they did it, but it's not like you take a node from their project and plug it into yours and boom, you're done. Which is what we're trying to go for. This is my goal, is that people can make a really cool feature and it's very easy to just share it with you and you can just plug it right in. Which I guess, so part of it is that what I've learned working with Derivative is it's a small group of very talented people, and it's not very interested in growing quickly, whereas the user base of TouchDesigner is growing very quickly. So that makes it twice as important that we all can share with each other and build things, that help each other to do bigger projects, because the company is not going to keep up with all of the complicated needs that everyone has. And plus, because we're all making these cool art devices, the more we can intercombine them, the more cool stuff we make. So, to that end, we're kind of developing this strategy of making components, kind of a standard way of developing them so that we can share them more easily. And I guess I'll show you, I just really quickly threw an example together today. So I made this slide projector component, and it's very simple. It's just looking at our image folder and gives you these slides. It shows you what file you're looking at. And so the basic idea of sharing with TouchDesigner is that you want to make an operator. Like, we're building all of these things in TouchDesigner, right, out of these lists of basic operators. These are all in C++, right? Obviously, when you make a node, you can't go inside and see the guts of it, but it's got guts that does something. But its whole interface is right here and in its parameters, right? So same thing, when you make a component, you want to kind of encapsulate the functionality that you want. It's going to do one thing, and people should never have to go inside. Like, here's the guts. I've got a Python extension. I've got some stuff going on, and then I've got some UI in there. And people can go inside and learn from this. But when you make your component, you make it so that people do not ever have to go inside of it. And it's kind of simple the way that TouchDesigner operators are simple. Hopefully, people can put it down and look at your custom components and figure out how to use the thing. So this is the idea. And settings should be in your parameters. And your inputs and outputs for more complicated data like tables, you can use an input. And anything that has to go through this quickly, like any graphics processing, you want to do with inputs and outputs, which is exactly like this. You have a top, you've got settings in your parameters, you got input, you have output. You want to really build it the same exact way like that. So yes, any questions about that so far? Kind of get the idea? Okay. So just to give you like the quick rundown of sort of how it's done. Usually where I start is build your functionality, which I think everybody's used to this, right? I made a very simple network, but you're going to have a network of your 50 nodes that do some crazy thing. But you probably have just a few settings in there that are really the parts that you want to play with, that are the main features. You've set up tons of parameters in here to do whatever you're going to do, but really this example is very simple. There's really just two inputs to this thing, which is the table of pictures and which picture you're at, and maybe I have a couple of things that are just kind of an extension of this slider, this buttons for next and previous. But yeah, this is the idea, is that you figure out in your larger, more complicated network what are the important controls that you need to have, and you put those at the top. And I guess just to give you an idea of how easy that is now, and this is maybe a trick that you don't know yet. So you probably all know about customizing your component. So this is how you add your custom parameters. Right click, customize. So when you're inside here and you want to do something, I don't really have a feature that needs to happen, but maybe we'll just take this this Q pulse button here. So let's say that, or here we'll do Q. I want to be able to control this Q on-off parameter from the top of mine. Can take the parameter, just drag the name. You drag it to the word right here, the parameter header label here, and it's going to copy that parameter, copy all of its features in here. And then this gives you this option, set reference expression on the source. If you click that, it's going to put the expression in for you. And so now, just that quick, you have the, oh, sorry, you can't see both. Let me just get the parameters there. Anyway, so the Q is there, and you can control it from the top. So very fast now. Yeah.
Does that only work if you have a parent shortcut set, or does that create a parent shortcut for you?
No, it will work with or without a parent shortcut. If you don't have a parent shortcut, then it's going to give you parent parentheses
Sure.
or parent 2 or whatever, and it's going to give you a relative path.
Cool.
So trying to make it very quickly to promote your parameters up. So now we can kind of see, let's see if we can actually see this parameter work now. Oh. Yeah, looks like it. So I just added a control to this thing. So this is how fast it can be. Once you develop your functionality in here, you're just basically going to drag a bunch of parameters up to your top level. Let's see, other little tricks that I did in this.
And which version is it?
This is experimental, and it's about to go official though. So this branch is going to go official, and you'll have that dragability. We're having some problems with dragging into the lists. Eventually, you'll drag the parameter actually into the list, and it will put it in the right place. But right now, you just drop it, and it's going to put the parameter wherever it's highlighted here. So you'll see also that I have this a table for the different slides in the slide projector. So if your custom component needs to interact with any other operators, this is the way you do it. You put in you put an operator parameter in, and then you drop the external parameters. You never reference stuff from inside. You'll just always go to the top parameter and reference it that way. And so this is a nice trick for this also, because sometimes you want to wire stuff in. Oops, it's not open. Sometimes you'll want to wire stuff in, but sometimes you're not in the same network, and you want to put it in a parameter. It's nice to be able to do both, and so I have a simple trick that I do all the time, which is, as your default into your input, you just use a select, and then this select here is just referencing the parent parameter. So I'm selecting whatever is referenced here as the default. So if I have an input, it's always going to use the input. If I don't have an input, it's going to use the parameter. It's just a nice little trick for allowing you to do both. Cool. So let's see. Okay, so now I have some functionality here, and my controls are on the top, and all of this works. This is enough to be basically like a TouchDesigner operator, like a simple level is just going to show a graphic and doesn't really have a UI in its viewer, which is fine. So this is like enough to share with somebody, to have functionality built this way with parameters. But then the new UI tools that are coming, and also you can do it with the ones we have now, it's just a little bit more work. Our idea is to put the UI into its own container within your custom component and use that as your viewer. So now when I open view, I have my special UI for the slide projector. And in this UI container, I have the layout for this. And if you're not familiar with some of the new layout tools, this is pretty important stuff. You can now set this panel, you just set it to fill. You're no longer looking up at your width and height parameters, but you just set it to fill. So you're filling up your viewer with your UI, and then you build it however you want to on the inside. And in this case, pretty simple stuff. I just go a couple of buttons. Here's the thing with this design though. This UI has no data in it. Like, none of your information is held in the UI, so I can delete this UI, And my slide projector still completely works. And this is a very important concept that used to be a lot of TouchDesigner developers, you'd build your data into your UI, like your numbers are being held in your UI. It's not the way to go. You want your UI to just talk to the parameters at the top. So when I press these buttons, actually it's a bit more complicated than that, but the idea is all of your controls are just controlling your parameters. They only talk to the parameters. And it does not depend on having any of this for your component to work. This is very important. It also means that you can replace your UI if you don't like it. You can totally redesign it, and you're not going to have to mess with any functionality. And also, if you get somebody else's component and you don't like their UI, you can build your own UI for it. So it's really nice in that way. So just to give a really quick look at some Python functionality, if you guys have used your parameters, you've probably messed with a parameter exec, so you're watching your parameters and then you're looking to see like when the button gets pushed, do this or that. So all of these TouchDesigner execs, I personally think it's a much better idea to just send the function calls in these to an extension. I think extensions are object-oriented way of programming your components, and it's really worth it. I wish I could zoom a little bit. Can you guys read that okay? Is it just my eyes?
Just for performance, it's just better to just do it this way.
Huh?
Performance-wise, it's just better to do it this way.
To build with extensions?
Yeah.
It's not so much performance. Like I think a big part of why this design strategy works is to make it maintainable and kind of consolidated. Here's the thing: if you have a bunch of execs all over your network that have Python code in them, when you go back a month later to change something, you're like searching through your execs trying to find where something happens. And I think it's much nicer to just be able to search one Python file for all of your functionality. The other really nice thing is that when you write with an extension, you can promote your functions. So for example, what I'm doing in here is I send the parameter pulses from the previous and next buttons to here, and they call a previous and next function in the slide projector. So this is a super simple example, which obviously if you had more functionality, it would be more important. But just to give you the idea is, if I take this operator, so now you're kind of building a Python interface for the operator that you're building, your custom component. Remember, it's like building your own operator. So I can say, I can now just call next on it in Python, and so it's got kind of its own Python language built in. You can only do this sort of thing when you build in extensions. So extensions are the only thing that can promote actual Python functions up to your operator level. Otherwise, you're doing this thing where you're finding the operator, and then you're finding the script inside of it, and then you're either running a function inside of a script, or you're running the script itself that's inside of it. This is much more of a pain, especially for the next person that you pass it to. Like the point of this is, you know, when you share this with somebody, you can say, hey, it knows these functions that you can just call. From your buttons, you know, you might be calling previous or next, or you might get this one has the path to the slide stored in it. Yeah.
Is there some kind of self-documenting behavior of extensions where you could see the promoted functions on the operator without having to go into the extension and read it?
Yes, it's in the middle mouse click now.
Cool.
So you can see that I've made a next function, a previous function, and a slide path.
That's great.
And this here is just a kind of a proof of concept. What we're doing right here, this is going to get a lot better. This middle mouse area is going to become interactive, and it's going to have much better documentation. And if you want to be really nice to people, you can use Python self-documentation, which is triple quotes. You put a triple quote at the first line of your function, and then you can say move to next slide. And you can kind of describe what each function does. And then we'll be coming out with more self-documenting features with that too. So, you know, when you come up with that middle button, or the middle mouse button here, it's going to say next, and it'll give you a little description. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so moving towards that sort of self-documenting stuff. Yeah, so that's the great part about extensions, is you can give your custom component its own kind of Python library of functions to do more complicated stuff. How to make the extension? Oh yeah, of course. Super quick. I think this one doesn't have one. Okay, so to combine with my very simple stupid slide projector, I made a very simple stupid mixer, which basically, well, can't see much in there. Here, we'll just make a top of something coming into this mixer. And so this one basically is just it's just a choice of mixing techniques, and then a mixer slider. And so let's say if I wanted to add an extension to this one's super simple. You do customize component again, and then not in the custom parameters, but in the extension code, you just name your extension. So mixer. I like to just, for my own sanity, I like to put the ext suffix at the end. It's a matter of personal choice. Greg hates that I do that. So mixer extension, and then you add, and you can add this. Basically, the choices of extensions here are standard has some like example code starting in it. Empty is a very empty extension class, and internal parameters is, I'm not going to get into that. It's a whole crazy kind of thing. You can look on the wiki about that. So I'll add a standard one, and then you can just hit edit, and you'll see it brings up, it gives you a couple of helpful imports, and then it gives you all this kind of example code of simple ways to do stuff. Notably, there's the create property function, which it creates a variable inside of your extension that is, you can set dependable to true. Sorry, you can't really read this well, but you can set it to be dependable, which means that when you change the variable in Python, any operators that are watching that variable, like through a, you know, in a parameter expression or something like that, they will update when you change the Python variable.
So it kind of tags it to cook.
It tags it to cause things to cook when that variable changes. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, very, very helpful.
And how is it performance-wise?
It's very fast. Yeah, I mean that's nothing. And then you may have noticed that we're optimizing a lot of basic expressions right now. So expressions, Python's getting much faster all the time. So that's really great. In this extension, there's also an example of how to do storage. I actually almost never use this, but it's for if you want to store some of your Python information, like when you save the file, it's actually going to be stuck to the operator. Usually you don't have to do that. If you want information stored on your operator, it's better to put it in a parameter if you can, or even a table. But if you want to store Python stuff, you can using storage. And then there's just a couple examples of a function. if your function or variable is lowercase letter to start, it's not promoted. That means it's kind of internal. And if it is capital, it is promoted, which means that you can just do, so so you see we have my function here, and we have promoted function here, that's capital. So just to show you the difference between those two, I'm going to say m equals op this thing. So m is my operator, so I'm going to say m dot promoted function sorry if you can't read it. So I can just call straight on the operator, it knows promoted function. And then the other one was called my function with a lowercase. So m doesn't know my function. So m my function, it gives an error. So in order to access that, it's actually in the extension itself. So you would have to say m.ext, which is how you get to your extensions, mixer ext, m.ext.mixer.ext.myfunction is how you would have to reach it. So it doesn't totally protect you from outsiders using it, but it's kind of saying this is not meant for your external use. This is more like internal use.
But this is something which claims my use in some way, because like in Java or C++, there's like this style, your program style, where you have like all your methods beginning with a lowercase, and then you have like the public and private thing. You get the keywords, and because like I think it was like variables get like the uppercase, and methods are with the lowercase.
Yes.
So it's a little bit.
This would not have been my choice of interface. This was before I came along that they made this decision that they're going to use upper and lower cases to differentiate these things. But that's kind of just how it is. I think that's derivative being creative with Python in ways that people who are Python programmers, like, it kind of grinds my gears as well. But
there are private and public keywords for Python.
There aren't, but there are decorators. You would do it with, the right way to do that would have been with decorators,
Yeah.
but I imagine nobody at Derivative had ever used a Python decorator when they incorporated Python, so they don't know how to do it. So this is what we have. And as sort of like off-putting as it is at first, it's fine, it works. And you know, you don't want to make a huge ton of Python functionality for these anyways. For the most part, I mean, TouchDesigner is not meant to be a coding environment, you know, like I try to force myself to use Python sparingly as much as possible, even though that's kind of my job. But it's, you know, Touch is really meant to work with the nodes. So, you know, you don't want to base too much on Python. Anyways, yes, I agree with you. That's not the best way to do it, but that's what we have, and so that's how it works right now. But sorry, that went a bit fast, but you saw how the extension was created. It's you just you go into the extensions and customize component, and then you push the add button. It makes, and what that does, it just makes a DAT, is all it's really doing. It's filling up a DAT with the starters of your class, and it's also filling out your extension parameter here, which is a somewhat obscure little bit of Python code that initializes your extension. And then going back to the slide projector a little bit, just to see how it interacts from the touch world into the Python world. All I'm doing in my parameter execute is when I get a pulse from a parameter, I just call the extension again, ext.slideProjectorExt on par pulse, and then I pass the parameter on. So I'm just taking whatever I get in my parameter exec and just send it over to the extension, and then it processes it however it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help? Was there more you were looking for there? Yeah, once you play with it, you'll get it. So just to kind of to justify all of these sort of like kind of this narrow road to design, the reason that we're doing all this is to kind of make these snap together parts. Like right now, when you snap together TouchDesigner, you're starting with all of this stuff, and you have to figure out how to program in this language. But I just took these two very simple operators that I made, in like an hour today, and basically I took them, wired them together with a few like containers just to arrange some arrangement UI here. And then let's see, try to get it so you can see the network too. So I've made this network. I basically have in one container, I put two of these slide projectors next to each other in this container. And then below that, we have this mixer component. And then wired them in. And we have like a really stupid VJ mixer, just like that. And mind you, because we've made our nice user interface in the panels, you really just snap it together. You just drop these things into another container, tell them to stretch, and you have a sizable interface. So you can imagine if you're just starting with TouchDesigner, rather than building this VJ mixer out of these things, you can find these complete pieces that have a UI on them, snap them together into a panel, and apparently my slider's not working, but whatever. I think this part works. Maybe not. I don't know. Like I said, I made this thing in an hour today. Oh yeah, it is working. So anyways, point being, like as a community, we can start building these components with nice UIs. People can start snapping together very functional, creative things. At which point, it's sort of like the Ableton Live layer, where in Ableton Live, you're just putting effects and instruments and piling them on each other and playing with them, and so it will allow artists to make very cool stuff without having to become programmers first. And then when they're ready, or they want to make a change to something, then they might just go in and start messing with things as they want to. But point being, they don't have to learn Python and how to arrange this and how to make a UI just to get this effect.
So the idea is basically to just increase the collection of components or of tools actually in the library.
Yes, I mean, what's provided by TouchDesigner, these are great as programming elements, but they're not exactly show tools, right? And same with in the palette, there's a lot of useful stuff, but it doesn't really snap together well. And so by using this design strategy of making new operators and thinking of them as operators, as a community, we're creating this library of things that can be used together. And even, these are a bit complex in that they're like pieces of this like slide projector mixer that I've made. But even if you make a cool effect that you put on a top, you just make an input and an output and you make it look just like something like a level top. You make it work just like that, and then people are going to get that online and put it right in their top chain. And it lets the community kind of develop TouchDesigner, as much as the company itself. And then the really cool shit will get optimized in the engine. Eventually we'll realize, oh yeah, people are using this all the time. Let's make it not go through 6 different nodes inside a custom component. Let's actually just make a operator for it.
Actually, Milan just brought me to the idea about building a component where you can actually always, the component always tells you what kind of frame rate is visualized, how much time is left in seconds of a movie, not like in frames, so that you actually can see the time remaining of a film. So like standard timeline tools. So this is actually very great. Like this is like would be an example of like a standard component which is not existing at the moment, right? Which is like based on an input job, but it's not really like proper visualized, because what you want to see like in a timeline is the time remaining of a movie, the frame rate, and
you're talking about adding features to one of the basic operators. Yeah. Absolutely. I find all the time that like, you know, I'll find the operator that I want, but it doesn't work quite the way I want it to, and I have to add a couple other operators, and then it's just what I want. And then I want to use that same thing all the time. Exactly. You wrap that in a custom component, you just drag your parameters onto the top that you need, and then you share it. And now that we have chop, you can share it with people. If you put a lot of time in it, you can sell it, you know, and I think that if we can start working this way, it's going to explode, and it's going to make everybody more productive, and also, you know, give you a little bit of feedback to your own work, because people are going to start using your stuff, and if even if they're not buying it, it might help you debug it, and they'll at least give you encouragement and kudos, and it helps.
Is there maybe a plan of implementing chop into TouchDesigner itself? Like you have the palette browser, and then you can just
there's going to be there's going to be an online search, so you'll be able to search for keywords, and it's going to come up with internal operators, palette elements, and it is also going to search chop, and the derivative website, I believe, is also going to have some ability to publish operators within it. And hopefully we will also have a marketplace or incorporate chop into our own eventually. I mean, it's going to happen eventually. I'm just not sure when, because it's just more work. But yes, you'll be able to search, and then you say like, what do you need? You put in your keywords, and it's going to try to find the operators that you need. Yeah.
Is there a wiki page? I know there's like the documentation on how to work with custom parameters on the wiki, but is there a wiki page that kind of describes this component building workflow that you can direct?
No, this is kind of it's kind of just solidifying since the summit. I think we really kind of put together into words what we've been working towards, and so this is the first time I'm going to teach this workshop on Saturday, which is basically going to be this in detail. Yeah. And so I think we're kind of just moving towards that right now. So it's still, I mean, it hasn't even really spread through the whole company yet. Sure. You know, this is mostly kind of come out of how Jared and I have been developing widgets. So yes, coming, but yeah, this is, you know, you guys are some of the first people that we're talking to about it.
It's kind of a stepping stone to widgets, isn't it?
This is a stepping stone to widgets. Basically, you know, just to give you guys an idea of what the new UI system is going to be, you know, inside the slide projector, I made this UI panel, and then I old school wired some buttons and components together to create this UI. What widgets is going to be is it's going to drop this UI in, you're going to get a screen, and then you're just going to be dragging different UI elements. You're going to drag your buttons around, arrange them however you want, drag and drop, you know, aligning however you want, and then you're just going to drag parameters directly to your buttons. So the whole UI step is going to be very drag and drop and simple, and powerful as well. Your UI will automatically link to your custom parameters on the top. And so you'll have these kind of two-way controls. Like right now, it's not really two-way controls. I guess the mixer is a better example of this. So if we look at the mixer, inside of here, I've got the actual mixer component here, which when I change the operation here, oh, it's weird, whatever. When I change the operation here, it's got a, well, let's see, it's got an expression there, but I don't have it Oh no, I'm sorry. This is so. This is a bad example. Basically, it's sometimes difficult to have a control in your UI that works as well as the same control on your parameters, because it's like one needs to control the other, because all the controlling is one way in TouchDesigner right now. You've got an expression somewhere. With widgets, you're going to have a two-way control basically, so you can change it and change a parameter in two different places.
Sure.
So the way I get around that, and so this is another important thing for developing your UI. The way I get around it for this is using the parameter comp, which is very powerful if you haven't used it yet. So the UI for this is super stupid, just a viewer and a parameter component, and all the parameter component does is actually look up at the top level parameters on this one. So it's just giving you a view of this same parameter box.
And rendering it into a panel that's interactive.
And rendering it into a panel that's interactive, yes, exactly. And this is, honestly, I think this is the best way to design your UIs right now, is just make custom parameters for all your controls and show those custom parameters. If you need a panel-based UI, just use a parameter comp. That's like the key.
By accident a few days ago. I didn't
Oh yeah.
parameter comp existed, and I was like, that's it.
This is
build it once, and you pick the sections you want, and you drop them where you need them.
This is the way to do it right now. Yes, you landed on the best way, I think, currently to do Touch UI. Yeah.
Are there any plans to be able to customize the layout, not the layout, but the style, yeah, to give it like a style sheet, to be like, I want to have a round corners.
The widgets are completely customizable. Yeah, the widget kits, you can do all your background textures and colors and fonts and everything like this.
But there's a bit of that in the parameter comp, isn't there?
The parameter comp doesn't really give you any customization stuff, no.
Okay.
No, you can't change the look of these. Basically, you're kind of stuck with these TouchDesigner look, sort of.
Do stuff like I want to place two sliders next to each other.
You also can't do that. Yes, but exactly. But Widgets is going to let you do all that drag and drop, auto aligning, everything very, very simple.
You could do that with two parameter comps that get parameters from different pages and aligning them like panels. You could be cheeky.
Yes, you're going to have nightmares doing that. And you may have noticed that this is going to go away, but you have to watch out for this. The parameter comps, if you squeeze them too much, they deform.
Yeah.
I'm lobbying hard to make that go away, but I don't know. It might be another month or two.
Sure.
But yes, Stefan, you're exactly right. The laying things out however you want to is very difficult. You can kind of do 4 numbers in a row, sort of like the
Hello.
It was recently I was trying to make like a time code input thing.
yeah. So you can do floats. You can do this like 4 floats here. Yeah, but it's not a slider. But then you can use this nightmare thing if you like this. But okay, that's the crash course in designing UIs in this way.
Cool.
Any other questions, or applaud me? Cool. Thanks for listening, everybody.
One more time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a question, and it's about you using a lot of these Python expressions to access the parameters on top level.
Yeah.
So I heard once that it's like slower than using exports. So especially for like a folder path and stuff like this, I created the workflow of having like evaluate that to export.
Yeah. In the latest versions, it's not slower anymore.
Okay.
So the new official build that's coming out, especially, so yeah, let me show you.
But the test question
let's see what we've got here.
This is a new one.
That one's that. Yeah, I just gotta find an expression
Okay.
that's actually doing that.
We were seeking
So this
to
one,
last was,
you can see, I don't know if you can read it, but it says optimized at the end of the value. So that means that it's actually compiling it down to C speed, so that's as fast as a chop export. The only time it's not going to be optimized is if you're doing some kind of fancy Python stuff in the expression that the engine doesn't understand yet.
Yeah.
But all of your simple stuff is just going to work. Yeah.
Does that depend on parent shortcuts or?
No, so this one is, yeah, and if you don't know about the parent shortcuts, this is really nice. You give it a name, and so then anywhere inside of it, you can just say parent.mixer. You don't have to know how high up it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can just say here instead, parents, and it's still optimized. Yeah.
If you do like a path-based search, if you do like op.dot/, and then the name, or if you give an absolute path, will that optimize as well?
Yeah, it's still gonna optimize.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the engine has really gotten good with the optimization stuff. Yeah, a lot of it is going to be optimized. Chop channels also. If you do a Python reference to a chop channel, it's basically as fast as exporting now.
Cool.
So I would say don't bother exporting anymore because exports are a pain, and you can't just say like, you can always say ×2, ×3.
Yeah.
And it's still optimized, and so you don't have to insert a math chop anymore.
You can do the reference and then manipulate it in Python, which compiles to C math.
Yes.
Great.
And it will optimize all your basic functions. If you do something fancy, it might not optimize. But you can just, all you have to do is do that mouse over the name, and it'll tell you if it's optimized. Yeah.
Great.
Cool. All right, there we go. Applaud me again. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I hope you guys use this, because this is the future for us. This is how we're gonna share things and like make the touch library explode.